16th September 1944, the 47th day of the Warsaw Uprising. In the enclaves of the city that are still in Polish hands, they're still fighting, street by street, building by building, and even floor by floor. Because of the number of dead soldiers and dead civilians, they're running out of space in the streets and in the public squares of places where they can actually bury the bodies of the dead. In Żoliborz, the fighting continues to be intense, with the 26th Panzer Division losing 110 killed and 240 injured. In Mokotów, due to the pressure of the attacks, the Polish resistance is forced into an ever tighter circle. 16-year-old Andrzej Borowiec is here in the Czerniaków district on ulica Okrąg, not far from where I live. And the morning is peaceful when all of a sudden light mortars open up and heavy machine gun fire. And he suddenly hears a dreaded sound, tanks, one of the enemies that they find hardest to fight back against. Then he hears an even stranger sound. It's the Eastern Polish accent of soldiers of the 1st Polish Division, part of the Soviet Army. Finally, the Russians have crossed the river. At 4 a.m. on the morning on this day in 1944, Soviet troops jumped into thin-skinned boats and started moving across the wide, fast-flowing Vistula River. I remember watching this as a demonstration a few years ago and was shocked by just how slow those boats were moving. A young soldier, Stanisław Komorski, watches from the western side of the river and sees the fountains exploding from the mortars that the Germans are sending over in the artillery and the heavy machine gun striking sparks into the water. He hears the screams of the Soviet troops as they're shot, the injured, and they start drowning as the boats disintegrate in the fast-moving river. About 300 troops make it over in the first crossing and up to 2,000 thereafter. And later on, Jan Mazurkiewicz, the leader of the elite Radosław group, has been sent down to the Powiśle and Czerniaków districts in order to hold this area to enable the Soviets to cross the river, is finally able to meet the commander of the Soviet troops that have come across. Like the Polish Home Army, the Berling Officer, as they were called, were soldiers comprised of both men and women. And Mazurkiewicz is absolutely overjoyed, finally help has arrived. However, Soviet planes weren't used to support their troops in the crossing, and nor was Soviet artillery. The help that had come, whilst it was welcome, was still piecemeal. Thank you very much for watching this episode of 63 Days of Extraordinary Courage, where every day we tell the story of the Warsaw Uprising. In tomorrow's episode, you'll find out what happens when those Soviet troops finally go into action alongside the Polish Home Army against the Germans. Tune in for that episode at 5 p.m. Warsaw time, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.